Hi, guys. Welcome to the Training Partners Podcast. Sean and I actually both recorded podcasts at different times. So this will either be episode 15 or 16 to be determined which one comes out first. So I have a very special guest today, Maria. I'm going to try to pronounce your last name. I realized I've never said it before until this moment. Fecik.
Correct.
Let's go. I did it. So, uh, brief introduction on Maria. She's my coach. So that's why we wanted to have her on today. Athlete, coach, business owner. You have competed in the Elite 15 within Hyrox. You have coached people to some high levels to world. How many people have you coached to worlds?
Um, we had last Worlds, I think we had about 15 people at Worlds.
So 15 in just one season.
Yeah.
And then also running a business, which I do not know a lot about your business. So I'm really excited to, when we get to that part, to learn more about the business owner, Maria.
Sounds good.
Cool. So we'll get into it. So we'll start off. I want to focus on you as an athlete. And so I want to hear like kind of your background, how you got started, and then lead into how you discovered Hyrox and what drew you in.
Yeah, so my athletic background goes back like 20 years. So I'm 36 now, and I kind of started to get into growing up. I always played rep hockey. So I always had that background or foundation in terms of like team sport. And then in my early 20s, I guess more like 19 years old, I went into bodybuilding and I did that for about 3 years. Um, Competed there. And then I moved into endurance sport. So I did long distance triathlons. So I've done Ironman, half Ironman. Moved into ultra running after that. So I've done up to 50-mile trail races and then some marathoning. And then we finally found Hyrox. I think we got to a point when I say we, my husband and I, we both were training for similar modalities. And we found when we were primarily just ultra running, we lost a lot of strength.
Mm.
And it's just a fact of just not being able to put the time into the gym because you're doing a lot of additional running and that breaks down your body in the trails and then just fatigue levels and stuff like that. So you kind of have to prioritize something there. And so we found when we got back into the gym, we felt like pretty weak. I used to be able to like bang off pull-ups, push-ups, and I could barely do those anymore. So it was kind of shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up, one of Mike's clients, and my husband Mike had a client that said this talked about Hyrox, and we were like, "What's that?" And then we did our first doubles race back in like 2022 in New York and qualified for Worlds out of that. And then that was our first kind of like introduction. We did one race, went to Worlds, had no idea what it was, what was it was all about. And we got there and we're like, oh my God, this is like a pretty big production. And then kind of like the rest is history. And we just like love the training aspect. I know the term hybrid gets thrown around a lot right now. But my husband, Mike, actually he used to work for a company, and him and the founder kind of wrote the first concurrent training or quote unquote hybrid training program where they did
Mm.
triathlon and strength training and combined it. So he's been doing hybrid training for like 20 years. But now it's become more and more popular.
So does that mean Mike like coined the term hybrid athlete?
He did not coin it. I would say like he supported kind of like one of the first thought leaders in the space and did one of the first like hybrid training programs and like created like an actual program that they were selling through the company. But he
Okay,
didn't coin it. His boss coined it, or so to speak.
that's great.
But yeah, it's been around for a while, but it's had this like crazy explosion
Yeah,
recently.
that's great. So when you did New York in 2022, how many competitors competed? Do you remember that year?
Um, I remember it's funny, I was talking about this yesterday with a couple people because that was our first race, and I remember it being 4 laps, which
Mm.
seems like crazy long now, or just like a lot of turning. And it was pretty crowded from what I remember. I think our first race we did like a 106 in a mixed doubles, and don't quote me on that, I'd have to look
I
it
would
up.
say my second mixed doubles was faster than that, so I'm better than you, is what you're saying.
You're already on like a way better trajectory than me. That was like when that Worlds we went to. Shout out to Chris Rogowski. That's the Worlds that she won. But times like that we're winning in like the elite spaces were more like 106, 107, 108. And
Mm,
now those times, it's so cool to see how the
yeah.
sport has kind of evolved since then. Like those times are still amazing. But like to get into the elite level now, you're needing more like 101, 102, 103
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's been really cool to see because so many. That's why I asked how many people competed because I think I heard it was around 1,000 maybe or even less because I did New York the past 2 years and this year was pushing 10,000 and it was around like 5 or 6,000 last year. So just the insane blow up of the sport's been fun to watch.
There's also a race, I don't know which race in the UK it is, but I think they're doing it over 9 days.
I think it's London because someone was talking about that this week as well.
Yeah,
So we've
crazy.
had we've had some of our members like we want to do an international race next. So it's that might be on the radar. We're not sure yet.
Damn. Well, there's lots of options. So
Yes, which is great to see. Okay, that's cool. So my next question was you touched on a little bit was your athletic background. So you said you did the ultras and stuff like that, and then did you mention you did bodybuilding? Is that like was that your like touch into fitness? Is that how you got started?
yeah, I would say that's my touch into kind of like the nutrition space, understanding macros, understanding nutrition, way back like when I was 19. And then that got me into weightlifting, which I really loved. So I had like a really big foundation. My background, my education background's in kinesiology. So I think you guys have that degree in the US, but similar
We
to like
do.
a health science kind of thing.
Yep.
So I was always kind of like interested in sports, athletics, the gym, etc. But I really got a lot of experience and knowledge through bodybuilding and doing a lot of like obviously a ton of weightlifting, low intensity cardio, like that
Hmm.
kind of training.
And now that you've transitioned to like, is Hyrox like the one and only sport you're competing in right now?
Yes. Aside from I'd love to do probably some road races, but it's always hard to find the time to sprinkle them in around like the Hyrox season. I always find every time I want to do a half marathon in the fall, it's like hardcore Hyrox season kind of kicks off.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get to like the spring, you're kind of still like getting close to worlds and like you're trying to manage recovery, training, all that stuff. So I find that challenging, but predominantly I'm just racing Hyrox right.
Okay. So with that, what is like your training approach? How are you balancing? Because like you mentioned, you were doing a lot of just running when you were doing, more of the
Mhm.
ultras. How are you balancing the strength training combined with the running?
Yeah. So really, I end up breaking it down into 2 sessions. And keep in mind, my life since then has like changed in terms of like career and stuff like that. So I used to be in like management consulting on top of like trying to run a business with Mike. So it was challenging to kind of get everything in. And that was starting to push me towards like entrepreneurship to have some more of that like flexibility. So I'm lucky in the sense that like now that I'm an entrepreneur, I have flexibility to fit my sessions in around kind of like work and all that stuff. And it's up to you, obviously, when you're an entrepreneur to get stuff done. So you can do it whenever you want. So that's like the beauty of it. But now we split it into 2 sessions. So usually, first session will be something usually cardio based. So I've incorporated more biking now, which I'm finding really helpful for like lunging and muscular endurance. So some biking or running, like I was at the track this morning, and then later this afternoon, I'm going to go back and do some lower body. Right now, we're in more of like a high volume strength phase. So, like lots of repetitions, more of like that muscular endurance rep range. Not a ton of like maximal strength or anything like that. That was more what we'd focus on over the summer. And now
Mhm.
we're increasing volume, which I've actually found after racing Toronto. Like I think I attribute that to the fact that I wasn't overly sore because I've gotten so sore in training before that just doing like 100 meters of lunges now isn't as like shocking to my system.
Right.
But yeah, I usually separate it in like the 2 sessions, and try to give myself like a full meal in between 3 to 4 hours if possible.
How many days a week are you doing those 2 a days?
I would say 6.
6. And then on the seventh day, are you giving full rest day, or is that more just like a zone two type of day?
I like to take a full rest day. I hadn't before for a while, and I actually find when I have a full rest day, I feel like it gives me that opportunity to really focus on work, focus on clients, not worrying about having to drive to the gym and stuff like that and getting it all in. It actually is like meant a nice mental reset for me.
Hmm. Yeah, so you're not literally in the same space every single day because it's your work and it's where you're working out, so it's a lot at one time or in one
Exactly.
space. Okay, great. So then my next question would be when it comes to importance of your training, because obviously there is like if you don't know, the other half of our podcast is Olympic weightlifting. So we're Hyrox Olympic weightlifting. So we have two extremes there. When it comes to prioritizing your training, what percentage would you say is going to be focused on running specific?
I would say probably 60 to 70% of my training, like my
Mm-hmm.
personal training, I would say is focused on like run specific work. It's such a big foundational piece of Hyrox specifically, and having that engine is really important. But then again, too, I've also scaled back running volume and incorporated more biking just for better recovery, in my opinion. And then I always felt like that could be like a missing link for me for like lunges.
Hmm.
And it's just because it's that same kind of feeling or stimulus you get when you're like 100 meters or 80 meters into your lunges and you feel that like that like muscular burn, and it's being able to sustain and stay at that discomfort. I'm finding super helpful. But so I've reduced run volume recently, but I would say it's still like the cardio aspect is still like a really massive component. So I'd say like 60 to 70%, maybe
Okay.
60.
And people are going to hear that and they're going to think they can just replace their runs with biking. So, but you already have a very strong base when it comes to running, and running is not a weak link of yours. So, at what point do you think that is okay for someone to kind of transition? Like, I don't need to be running 3 or 4 sessions a week. Maybe it's just two a week. I don't know if you went with a pace per kilometer. Do you think they need to be comfortably running to reduce the running and switch into more biking?
I honestly think it comes down to like the athletes specifically, because there's
Mm-hmm.
some athletes that do really well with high volume and like
Mm-hmm.
they should be training high volume, or they don't have, as like you said, as much time and experience building that aerobic base. It's kind of like I like to test it and see. Like there's a certain mileage in my head that I feel like I want to sit at. And then I test it and see like how's my recovery? How am I feeling? Am I hitting my quality sessions well? Do I feel rested and recovered? And I use that like kind of qualitative and sometimes quantitative, because you have your watches with all of your data and HRV and stuff to see how
Yep.
recovered you are. So I kind of use all that to understand how much running I should incorporate. I don't want people to take this and think that it's not a really important component, because it is. But
Yep.
some athletes don't need to run as much. Some athletes need to run a little bit more. If you're newer to running, obviously it's a slower progressive build. You wouldn't go from
Mm-hmm.
like 0 to 100. I still probably run 4 or 5 days a week, but I'm not running like 6, 7 days a week anymore.
Okay.
So I still have like a decent amount of running sessions. I've just supplemented some of the additional running volume with biking instead.
That's a good perspective there.
Mhm.
When it comes to race day, when you're preparing, what is your competitive mindset? I think there's different people. Some people go with the term we like to use is choose violence. Some people are more just like stoic. What is your mindset approach when it comes to race day?
If you see me pre-race, you'll notice that I'm like pretty quiet. I don't, it's probably me also just like managing nerves a little bit, but I like to put my own music on. Um, I don't like to get into like big conversations right before I'm about to go out. I just want to think about what I'm doing, what I'm executing, get in tune with like how my body's feeling, because then you need to also adapt on the fly during a race as well. And just kind of get into that like mindset. For me, it's more like, let's see what I'm made of. Let's see what I'm capable of. What promise can I make to myself before I go out that I'm just going to do my best and see where I'm at? Or get into that mindset of like, if something doesn't go my way, how am I going to respond? So I think that's one of the hardest pieces, and one of the things I'm really seeing or understanding now is, aside from just being physically fit to do the race, you also have to be like mentally fit.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally fit meaning like you need to have the right mindset going into the race beforehand. You also need to be adaptable during the race. I have a lot of clients, and I've been guilty of this as well, is as soon as like a station doesn't go the way you want it to, or you feel behind, you get mentally disengaged. How do you keep up the fight? And there's been a lot of races where I'll be like, just stick with it, just stick with it, just stick with it. Because I always find the most consistent racers in Hyrox are the ones that do the best. And if you stay consistent, you'll see, because it is an endurance race, that if you stay like stay with your trajectory, stay running your race, you end up like making up time and making up places and stuff as well. But you have to
Hmm.
have that mindset of, okay, if stuff doesn't go my way, how am I going to respond? And it's not like I should cower and be like, shit, like I need to slow down. This sucks. It's how can you flip that around? Okay, like how can I leave it behind and then keep going? And that's something really challenging to do. So it's something I'm still working on.
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of it too, because again, back to like our other listeners, they have 6 minutes of a workout, like at most. Like you have a 1 minute clock to do a lift. So like you're talking 6 minutes. Obviously, there's warm up and all that good stuff, staying ready. But for us, it's anywhere between what's the new world record, which is set 53 minutes, and depending on your level, up to 2 hours. So like
Mhm.
you got to stay mentally focused for a very long time and fight off those demons of like, hey, this is not fun in this moment.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think everybody goes through that feeling like there's ebbs and flows in a race where you're like, okay, that didn't feel great, but I got to keep moving, got to keep, like, it's always like, got to keep moving. How can you not, like, our ego in our mind is like telling us to slow down and it's a protective mechanism, but how can you still like almost rewire that and get around it? Because I think a lot of us kind of give into that and are like, oh yeah, you know what, this is hard, I should slow down. And then we
Hmm.
slow down and kind of take the gas off versus, okay, I'm in pain, or being even like during when we talked about pre-race mindset, I'm getting a lot more comfortable with the thought of like, okay, this is going to be painful, and like that's okay.
Yeah.
I used to fear the pain. Like I'd be
Mm.
like, oh my god, this is gonna hurt so bad. Oh my god. And a lot of like mindset stuff that I've been reading is really around like accepting that it's gonna be painful. Something else I read was like telling yourself like you're not going to die, because it's like this alert in your brain that's like, this is going to be really painful. It's dangerous. Da 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 da. You should slow down, and being okay with it being painful. Like
Yeah.
that's like the mindset shift.
Yeah, because it's a long period of time to be very uncomfortable.
Yeah, 100%. It's like at least an hour.
I think one thing you and I've talked about before is like my first few races, I was very much just like, all right, we're in the start tunnel. I would just sit in the back and just let it start, because I was more worried about not blowing up too soon. But now that I'm more confident and comfortable, it's like, okay, I'm going to get to the front of the line and try to push the pace to start. For you, like especially when you're in a big race trying to qualify for Elite 15 or in Elite 15 race, are you like toes on the line ready to go, or are you like sitting towards the back? What's your strategy there?
Um, Usually when it's like a regional race or like a local race, I'll always go to the front. I try to set the tone or like stay up at the front from the very beginning. When it's like an elite race, it's like slightly different because like I'll still stand like as close as I can to the front of the line. Um, the one nice thing about like Elite 15 racing is like there's no crowding. It's
Right.
just you and the other 14 people,
That's true.
which is nice. So it kind of all depends on race strategy. Some people are like go out hot and stay hot, and can
Hmm.
stay hot, which is impressive. Or there's some people's strategy that you'll see that like kind of sit back for the first few and then kind of attack as of like sled pull. And then you see them start to climb forward and
Hmm.
forward. For me, it's more of like a race the first lap or the first kilometer hard into ski erg and then settle into pace,
Okay.
from kilometer two on.
Maybe not a hot take, but I think it'd be fun if Elite 15 was like Elite 50. Just because, like, when you're watching, it'd be cool if it was more, just more people out there.
Yeah, I think like I'm curious if they'll grow the elite field just with how popular, Hyrox is becoming, because then those slots obviously get less and less, in terms of like probability or getting in and
Hmm.
stuff. But I do think as the sport grows, maybe who knows, maybe they'll expand to like elite, even elite 20.
Yeah.
um, because then it just gives people more opportunity for that stage and stuff. But it is nice to not have anybody else, like
That is true.
in both respects. Like it's nice to have people around you that are pushing you, because
Hmm.
sometimes in an elite race you're not necessarily always beside somebody, like on the run course, for example, if it's like lots of laps and stuff.
Hmm.
But then you also just kind of can focus on trying to nail your run
Yeah.
pace
Just
there.
by yourself.
Hmm.
Okay, when it comes to the eight lovely stations, which one is your strongest slash favorite?
Wobbles.
Really? Is your favorite? Is it because you're almost done?
It's I'm almost done, but also I have this ability to sit in the discomfort in that one. Like I can really bang off for the most part. And every race is different, but like that's the one station that's probably my fastest. Um, which is ironic, but then I don't know, I can just like bang off my wall balls for the most part, like unbroken or do like a really big set. My good time for me to finish is like 3:33 ish.
That's great.
Hmm.
And then which one is your nemesis or least favorite?
Um, my least favorite. I mean, I don't love the ski erg. I don't know what it is. I find it long. But I'm glad it's the first station. But I would say my nemesis or one that I'm really working on is my lunges. I found like they're improving for sure in terms of like speed and ability. So I'm curious as the season progresses how much faster I can get them. They're not where I want them to be yet, but that's always been one. Every time I go in, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that the your least favorite and favorite are at the beginning and very end.
Yeah.
Just interesting. Wonder if you just because you enjoy the uncomfortable so much. I guess sandbag lunges at the very end though, so that throws out that theory.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, this like lunges, I just try to get through. And then I know I try to relax on that last run, like my upper body.
Hmm.
And then usually I'm like, oh, okay, I'm ready to just get these wall balls over with.
That's great. When it comes to adversity, what has been your biggest setback or learning experience within competition?
I feel like this whole like last probably like 5 or 6 months for me has felt like a bit of adversity or a little more challenging. Um, I was finding like fitness was there for sure. And then I just like wasn't able to perform in like the back half of the season last year. So that was like a really tough, I would say like 5 or 6 months for me from like probably February, March through to Worlds. Um, and so that's something I've been like reevaluating. And it's hard when you feel like you have great fitness and then it's not being expressed well, like when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to race time. So that's why I've been doing a lot more work around like mindset because for me, I'm wondering like, is that the missing piece for me? Is like the way that I'm approaching the start of a race and how I show up. So for me, I would say the last like 5 months have been like pretty challenging because then like you do a race, it doesn't go that well, which is very common, and I can completely understand that. And then you just feel like you keep trying, you keep trying, you keep trying, and then it's just something just like not taking. So it's been challenging in terms of like not continually not getting the result I'm looking for when
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've put in the work, I've put in the training. So I'm just like, what's the missing piece? Um, so from that, it's more of like the fact that you keep coming back, I think
Mm-hmm.
is like probably one of the harder things, but that's what adversity is. And it's like you're taking it on the chin and then you keep coming back. You take it on the chin and then you keep coming back. And it's like, man, I've been coming back a lot. But it's like the ability to still push through or persevere when like you feel like everything's kind of stacked against you.
Yeah, I think that's harder too because someone who's new to the sport, PR is I don't want to call them easy. You still have to work for them and earn them, but they're going to come in larger numbers and bigger jumps. With
Mhm.
someone like you, you're fighting for every single second, even if a minute, if you can, off your time. So like that's a harder place to be.
Yeah, and that's what I try to tell people a lot of the time too. I said like, for people that don't maybe have like the strongest running background or haven't really put in a strong run block. I mean, I think I said this to you too. It was like you will see leaps and bounds of progress within your
Hmm.
first like 6 months. And then I said like once you get to that point of like you get really good at it, you are fighting for like seconds.
Yeah.
Like I'd be happy. Like some people, I have clients that like PR'd their race by like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And I'm like, damn, if I could do that, amazing. Or like people have massive PRs after their first race, like 10 minutes, but it's also a
Hmm.
function of just like understanding the race better, managing the effort, all that. Obviously, it's not all about the training, it's also having an understanding of what you're doing.
Yep.
But I'm like, I always tell people, okay, like your first few races, you'll probably have like bigger and bigger gaps of improvement. And then the window starts to get a little smaller, but you still have to keep coming back because you're fighting and fighting for seconds
Yeah. Yeah.
once you get to that point.
You almost have to work harder for the smaller improvements.
Yeah, it feels more marginal. You're like, oh, PR'd by 30 seconds. And I've been training for like 6 months for that. Like, it's like, you know,
But at least it's still a PR, so we still celebrate that.
absolutely.
Okay, last question before we go into you as a coach. What is, I think I know the answer to this, but your most memorable moment as an athlete?
Ah, best, I'd say probably the most memorable one that like still even to this day gets me like a little teary eyed is like the Anaheim like LCQ.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first like Elite 15 season. And I distinctly remember that last like run coming in and feeling like I was in like sixth and I was like, I'm just not going to get it. But I remember I had a friend of mine's husband leaning over saying like, believe, like fight, keep fighting, keep fighting. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. And then I remember running into wall balls and I was like looking to my right, like, and everybody's dying on these wall balls. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So then I just started wall balling really fast and then took a quick break in wall balling. And then I remember them counting me down from like 90 or like, I guess like 10 left.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, holy, like I'm choking back tears, being like, oh my
Yes.
God, I'm going to do this. Like, this is wild. And I think because it was so unexpected, or like, it just shows, I guess, to that point of what we talked about earlier about staying mentally engaged because it isn't
Mm-hmm.
over until you throw the last wall ball. And that's like a good, and thank you for bringing this up because it's a good reminder. Was like, you keep fighting to the end because you
Yeah.
never know. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can keep fighting, keep up the effort, if I had just given up, I wouldn't have gotten to the Elite 15 that year.
Yeah. That's yeah. I've watched that video and it's a fun watch. So if you haven't seen it, please go watch Maria qualify. It was a fun race to watch. And I think we've seen that a lot too, because I think even was it 2 weekends ago in the men's race, Dylan Scott got passed on the wall. They both went unbroken, but he got passed on the wall ball. So like you got to keep fighting to the end, no matter what.
And I honestly think I've realized like the people that do really well, like everybody's suffering in the race, no matter who you are, whether you're elite, whether it's your first time, whether you're experienced, like everybody, if you're pushing for your potential, everybody is suffering the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the people that deal with the pain the best or have an understanding on how to deal with pain when it comes up in a race, I think are the ones that have that like extra gear that can then just push.
I think that's good too, because a lot of times people, especially new people, they'll ask like, "When does this get easier?" It's like, well, it doesn't. You just move faster or
I,
heavier
I
loads.
said
Like,
that so many times to people. I'm like, it does not get easier. I was
yeah,
like, wall balls always are going to be tough.
yeah, you just
Um,
do bigger sets.
yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for talking about you as an athlete. So let's transition to you as a coach.
Mhm.
So how did that start? How did you start coaching? And then specifically, how did you start coaching Hyrox?
Yeah. So I started coaching, I would say, like in terms of like women and athletes, like back in my early 20s. And then I took a break, did my MBA, got into management consulting, all that stuff. Still loved fitness, but it was more of like a secondary piece for me. And then my husband, when him and I got married, he's always been a coach. He's been a coach for 20 years and owned his own business. And he asked me if I would come on as a coach. And I was like I'll come on part time kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, and then we'll see where it goes. And then I got to this breaking point of like, okay, I'm starting to get too many clients. I have this really great job. Like, one has to give. I either have to
Mm-hmm.
like take less clients, stop coaching, not grow this business, or leave the job, jump with both feet in, which is a huge sacrifice, obviously, and then try to see where you could take this. My family, my dad's an entrepreneur. I've grown up around entrepreneurship, so I absolutely love it. So I always felt like that was like a path for me. Um, but then it was kind of like I tested the waters before I fully jumped in, because I'm also somewhat risk adverse,
Mm-hmm.
and get that from my dad as well. So we're just like more like I make calculated risks, I would say, before I like fully decided to jump in. It was like, I'm going to start really competing and training at a high level and then add in some coaching and kind of like see where it goes. And then as my roster grew, um, I decided like I can't do both. And then we also had and I'm sure we'll talk about this. We also have in-person classes here in Canada. So then all of that combined was too much for me to manage. So I made the really risky decision to leave a really cushy job.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to do it though, because we talk about that a lot here is you can like take that big risk with nothing, with no clients. Like, all right, you know what? I'm taking out this massive loan, starting a business, buying a gym, blah, blah, blah. But then you got to dig out of that hole.
Mhm.
Where I don't know your story there, but for us, it's been more of like, hey, we're starting very, very, very small, and it's going to be a slow 15-year grind to get to
Mhm.
where we're in a good place, but we're trying to minimize that risk. You may get to the end goal a lot slower, but the risk is a lot smaller. So it sounds like for you is a little bit of that of like, hey, you've built the base of having the clients, and then you can kind of lean into it more versus just jumping in and leaving the cushy job.
Yeah, and I think that's like a smart approach, right? Because you hear about a lot of successful entrepreneurs that kind of like nobody had like the whole idea of like overnight success isn't a thing. They've been
Mm-hmm.
working hard on the side. They've been, at one point, yes, you make the decision to leave something to pursue whatever your dream is. But at the same time, too, you also have to be smart about it because, we have responsibilities and bills and stuff that needs to get
Those
paid.
aren't going away.
Those are never going away. So then it's like you kind of have to find like, okay, what can I do to help grow this? What support do I need? At what point does my business need to grow to before I can leave said job or whatever that is? So that was kind of like the analysis I was always doing. Like, do I feel comfortable yet? Is
Mm-hmm.
everything covered? Are our base expenses covered? Do I feel like with what we're doing now, we can afford to like still have the life that we want? And
Mm-hmm.
only at that point was I willing to do the jump, versus like I would never personally quit a job with nothing
Yeah.
to go to.
Yeah.
That's
No,
just that's just me.
I fully agree and going about it that way. Before we get too far into entrepreneurship and ownership of gyms, let's go back into coaching. Like, what would you describe your philosophy? Are you like more data driven, experience based, more just intuitive? What kind of drives your coaching style?
I would say I like to look at kind of like the person as a whole. So aside from, especially because we do our bread and butter is like one-on-one coaching and personalized training, I always like to take like the feedback from my clients, so all the qualitative data in terms of like how they're feeling, recovery, and look at them holistically, or like what's going on in their life. Are they, going through a hard time? Did they start a new job? Like all those pieces give me information to consider when I am programming for this particular person. Are they traveling a lot? Are they opening up a gym? Do they have a different level of stress that they did when we first started? And like taking into account them as like a person, what their goals are, kind of just like um, all those pieces that you would get from just like having the feedback from them. And then, of course, I always look at quantitative data in terms of, how is their run pacing? Where's their heart rate at? And I'll use that obviously in our training peaks and take a look and see kind of like where they're sitting. Do I think they're going too fast, too slow? Um, and what's their pacing on their ergs and all that stuff we try to monitor
Mm-hmm.
quantitatively. But I think you have to use both pieces, right? Like I'll have clients that say to me like, I don't feel recovered, how do we pivot? So then it's like, how can I help them pivot in those moments where they might need an adjustment in training, or have a conversation with them to decide like, I know you're starting a new job. I sense this will be stressful. What can we do to make your training still fit your life, but not overwhelm you right now because you're going to be stressed with like a whole new routine of like getting to work, coming back, like you don't have as much freedom as you used to, or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the important part for me, specifically as a coach, is looking at the whole person. Because I think what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the other. And it's for me to figure out based on client feedback, what I'm seeing, um, having conversations and understanding where they're at from like a mentally, physically, spiritual standpoint, and make a program that kind of fits their life and their goals, not them fit the program kind of thing. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like a really long way of saying like, I just like to make sure I know the person, what they're dealing with, how they're feeling, using data, but then also qualitative feedback from them.
Yeah, I think I can speak personally. I think you do a great job of that because that's one of the reasons I wanted you as a coach is because I'm going to keep doing my weightlifting, not very well, but I'm going to keep doing it. And I thought you were able to do a phenomenal job of blending that together and understanding my training there and making the program work for me. And it's not just a cookie cutter program that you slap your name on. It's you actually design it for me, which is great.
Mm. Good. I'm glad you feel that way.
uh, when someone is not new, I was going to say new, but in general, what do you think the most common mistakes people make when training for Hyrox? I guess more than likely it's going to be a new athlete, but what is the most common mistake you see in Hyrox training?
That's a good question. I think the most common mistake I see would be not properly following kind of like the stimulus intention of the workout. So it might be like hear about this all the time in like the running community and obviously in Hyrox too about like when it's a recovery run, what does that mean? And I'll have clients that be like, well, that felt really easy and I could have kept
Mm-hmm.
running. And to me, I'm like, well, that's great. That's what you should feel like
Mm-hmm.
because that is the purpose of it. And really understanding what RPE is
Mm-hmm.
versus kind of like heart rate data. And like, I try to use it as a measure to keep people, I use heart rate data as a measure to keep people more accountable to slow down. I don't think it's the be all and end all, but I think when people don't necessarily have a ton of running background, how are they going to know what RP of 3 is versus RP of 8?
Because they'll all feel like eights.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Oh, it doesn't look very easy." Like, and I'll write down to them like, "You need to slow down." And I'll know
Mm-hmm.
that they need to slow down because I know we do a bunch of testing, right? And so then I know where, for example, like they're running an easy run at like half marathon pace. No, like I don't think you should be running that quickly.
Yep.
Or when you see like you're doing a particular stimulus like threshold, for example, and the whole goal is to run at threshold, not to run
Mm-hmm.
faster than threshold. It's to run at threshold because we want the benefit of running at threshold, which is then teaching our body to be able to handle the production of lactate a little better and shuttle it out more effectively. But when you run above threshold, you negate that. So
Mm-hmm.
you're at like, no, slow, like it's good if you actually slow down.
Yeah.
Stay at the pacing that's prescribed. And I'll go back and look at people's runs and look at what we intended, and then I'll comment. Sometimes something cheeky, but
Yeah,
usually
of
just
course.
like,
I,
yeah.
I think my favorite note you put in the training will be respect the pace, and I
Yeah.
think that's great because like it's like yep. Then on those days where you're feeling good, and I think I guess it depends on the intended outcome because there are some days it's like okay we're feeling really good and we do like when I strike when the iron's hot, but like if it's just I want to just if it's just a run. You're not going for a PR on that 1K. Like it's okay to just respect the pace and enjoy it.
And that's when you bring Bruno.
Yeah, that's when you bring Bruno. You would say always bring Bruno.
I would. I love this little dog.
He's the best. He's actually laying beside me right now, just taking a nap.
I'm jealous.
So, um, okay, when it comes to race prep,
Mhm.
how do you help athletes manage their pacing and then transitions and also recovery from stations?
So I think that's the biggest talk I have a lot of the time in pre-race strategy. Throughout our training cycles, they will or they'll be training at race pace for some intervals, more sometimes just for recovery or building an aerobic base, wherever we're at in the training cycle. When it comes to like actually race specifics and us going over like a race plan pre-race, I always talk about athletes with like managing the effort. That is literally what I just did. So many race debriefs or strategy sessions for Toronto, and I was like, manage your effort. Do not go off other people's effort. You need to know how fast you need to run. You need to know where to keep your stations at, but you need to manage your effort because if you go way too hard in the front half, you just suffer in the back half.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing in talking about mistakes people make in Hyrox, I think they forget that it's an endurance race. It's not a 5K. And then some people
Mm-hmm.
run the first half. It's like if you're running a half marathon, some people run the first half or the first whatever part at 5K, and you're like, you wouldn't do that.
Right.
You would run it at half marathon.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like that's a mistake I see too. But for people, it's understanding like what's your run pacing. That's what we're essentially all the training we're doing is like a dress rehearsal for the race.
Yep.
So it's finessing the race pace efforts. You should know what that pace, quote unquote, feels like to be running at, because again, it's very challenging to time your laps and stuff inside. You can't use GPS, so you're really going off feel, and you're going off a little bit of like the elapsed time if you're monitoring your runs, but you're guessing. We don't know exactly how long the outside of the perimeter is, right? Of the
Mm-hmm.
runs. They're usually not a full kilometer. So then you'd want to come in under what your kilometer is, right? So it
Right.
just really depends. But I would say managing the effort on the runs is one of the biggest important things. So knowing where your threshold is and sitting there, that's why we do so much of that in training, knowing what your erg pacing is at. So we always talk about making it feel not easy, but not all out sprint. It's like moderately strong. So we usually talk about like 2K plus 10, 2K plus 8-ish, depending on the person. Um, Sled push, we always talk about like taking breaks in between like pushes and stuff like that. So you're not doing full lengths unbroken. And also with new turf, it's just a different feel than last time. So it's like all these things people need to take into account with not going too hard in the front half so that they suffer in the back kind of thing. So it's really like managing run pacing, knowing your erg pacing, and then knowing how to push in the station, but not to the point of like, I need to take like 30 seconds of rest after every section that I
Mm-hmm.
do. Like that kind of.
Yeah, I think like when I try to explain it to people, it's like you want to be moving as fast as possible, but where you're able to maintain it.
Yeah, it's essentially like threshold, right? Threshold's being
Yeah.
able to maintain a certain run pace for like up to an hour. It's kind of the same thing. Same with like this whole race is like a threshold race.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you go a little anaerobic on some stuff for sure, and also it's different if you're doing doubles. But I'm talking from more
Mm,
of like a solo perspective.
yep. Yep. Uh, quick note on the carpet turf, the new turf. How is it?
I have been finding it challenging.
Okay.
So sled pull seems to be okay. Um, but I'm finding like the push, and I think it's a function of like needing to get lower. Feels a little more grindy than previous, but that's just my experience. I think some people think it's okay, but like in doubles, it was okay. But I also am pushing a lot less in doubles, so
Mm-hmm.
it's like I think it's all perception too. And then you don't want to start pushing. Oh my god, this is so heavy. It's like
Right.
stay positive. Okay, keep
Yeah.
grinding. But I do find it a little more challenging.
Okay. It's good to know. Uh, and you've touched on this about yourself mindset when it comes to coaching. What are some of the tools you use to help individuals with their mindset?
So, something we talk about, so we always like to do that pre-race strategy thing. So, we plan out kind of like I have the athlete write out what they're going to do for runs, what they're going to do for pacing, what they're going to do for nutrition, because I think that adds to confidence pre-race.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have everything planned out, you know exactly what you're going to do the morning of. You're not guessing. It's just all laid out, and all you have left to do is execute. So, try to minimize stress as much as possible. We also go over like the race map when it's out. We talk about the laps. We talk about like things I observe with like, okay, well, this race course is different than the last one you did. All the stations aren't in order. So make sure you remember like skier and rower on this side. You have to go all the way back when you're coming in the in arch and like just stuff like that, just to get them more comfortable with what they're seeing. We talk about like visualizing the race. So I get them to go through the whole race in their head from like the start tunnel to the end. So then when you show up on race day, your body's ready to execute. And then we also talk about pre-race warm-up, which is like very important that I don't think people put enough into, making sure that they prime their body for training. So a lot of that stuff that we do pre-race is to really build confidence for people, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. And then mindset wise, we talk about kind of like how they're feeling. We talk through kind of like expectations or like letting go of expectations or depending on who the athlete is. And then sometimes we tailor the strategy to what's best for the athlete. Like I have one client that's like, I don't want to have like a certain time I need to hit for sled push and sled pull. I just am going to monitor my runs and monitor my ergs and then go by feel on the stations. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. If that gives you the most comfort pre race, we want you to go to that line the most comfortable and the most confident.
Yes.
So we talk about things like that. So I think a lot of my mindset work is around kind of getting them to feel prepared and confident and making sure that their training matches kind of what they're going to expect in the race. And then also just having so much experience racing, I can tell them kind of like what to expect how it's going to feel, and just really try to like ease nerves and anxiety pre-race.
Yeah, I think that especially just like visualizing it has been huge for me. But I've caught myself like as it gets closer and closer to race day, just doing it way too much. And I've just been
Okay.
sitting there watching TV, and it's just like, oh, I don't know what just happened because I just watched myself go through this race 6 times. Just so ridiculous.
That's so funny, but good.
Yeah, it's good. So I'm definitely doing that part. When it comes to being a high level athlete like yourself and coaching, how do you kind of balance doing both of those at the same time?
Yeah, so this is actually a tough one because you really need to prioritize your training, make sure you're getting enough sleep, nutrition. So those are things I try to do for myself. I'm still working on making sure like I'm really strict with like my sleep schedule and stuff like that, but I need to find a little more ways to kind of like wind down, I think for me from like the athlete perspective. But then also you have to have some energy to, take care of your people and your clients
Hmm.
as well. So the way that I've done that is we usually have kind of like quote unquote like office hours where we will, answer messages from this time to this time and kind of just lay out expectations with clients in terms of like availability. I think being a new entrepreneur like a few years ago, and I think a lot of people can make this mistake too, is like because you're new and you're not sure, but like being too available also takes a drain on you as a
I'm
coach.
so bad at that. I'm so bad.
Yeah, being too available, messaging outside of hours, like people can message me outside of hours, they just know not to expect a response all the
Right.
time. The odd time I might be able to, depending on where I'm at, but like if I'm just like, I can't today, like I just need a break, then I won't. And I'll wait till the next day, which has actually been very hard for me to do.
Hmm.
Um, because you want to be there for your people, right? You care about them. I genuinely want them to do well, feel good about themselves and all that. But you also need to like take care of yourself too, so you can show up for them. So that's something I've been learning over like the last year because I was getting too burnt out, kind of always kind of being on.
Hmm.
And then working for yourself, it's hard to turn off, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have like I go to my office building and then I leave.
Yeah.
I'm like in my kitchen at the gym. Like it's part of your everyday life. So there's not a big definitive change between like environments.
Yeah. It's a unique work experience because like it's I think I'm gonna assume you love it as much as I do. It's a phenomenal job, but you're like where you're training is also where your athletes are. So like you'll have people come ask you questions. It's like, well, I need this for me time to get my training in. So it's
Yep.
a very tough balance. I think at the end of the day, we'd all say it's worth it,
Hmm.
but it's very hard to juggle that, especially because like it's a job where we have to care. If you
Hmm.
don't care about your athletes, you're probably not going to be a good coach in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say like that's the most important thing, or like something I really pride myself on, is how much I actually care about people and care about
Hmm.
my people. Um, I want them to succeed. I want them to know that I'm there for them. I want to be able to support them in the ways that they need. And every person is different as well in terms of what they need from you. Some people want more support. Some people don't need as much support. But at the same time, too, you also have to gauge kind of at what point, like, at what point do people also need the opportunity to kind of figure it out for themselves too, right? So there's also
Hmm.
that fine balance between all of it, right? You don't want to do people a disservice by giving them all the answers super quickly.
Hmm.
But at the same time, too, you want them to be a little self-sufficient. So it's like balancing that as well and being more of like a teacher.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely worth it though. I agree.
Yeah, 100%. Last question on coaching. What will, if you have one or a few, would have been your proudest moments as a coach?
Um, for me, I would say like I can think about just like when you feel like, and this is more generalized, but I do have an actual example, but when you feel like you've changed someone's life or like
Hmm.
they've expressed to you that you've changed their life for the better, I think that's like the best compliment you could ever get or best outcome you could ever get. And it's not necessarily like to a race result or tied to a result. It's tied to like a way that they show up,
Hmm.
um, how much confidence they've built through being able to do something hard. There was like a couple people. So one client I had recently, she's a bit older. She has, bad knee. Doctor told her she shouldn't be running anymore, but she still wanted to do a Hyrox. She wrote it in her journal like a year ago and kind of like laughed, like, oh, I don't think I could ever do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we minimized her running volume. We did a lot of aerobic work on the bike and ergs, minimal running, but just enough so that she could finish the race, monitored her knee pain, all that stuff. And then she just completed her race and like wrote up this like really beautiful
Oh,
post race thing. Like, I've always wanted to be able to like run with my grandkids and all this stuff. Right. And you're like, damn, like she did the work, but like I was
right.
a part of it. And it's just like so rewarding to see that. And then we've had other people like in our classes that I see that when I see them day one versus when I see them 2 years later, show up a little straighter, a little more confident,
Mm-hmm.
like a little more like proud. Their energy, their light shifts, and you're just like, I get chills talking about it because you're like,
Yeah.
this is like the rewarding stuff of helping people reach goals, get healthy, feel good about themselves, build confidence in the gym. You just see these like personality shifts
Mm-hmm.
and more of like not hiding anymore. They're like
Yeah.
taking up space, which is like really cool.
Yes. I think that's definitely the best thing about this is because, like, yes, coach somebody to be a world champion. That's really freaking cool. But
Mhm.
like when you really change someone's personality to like they now have that confidence, it's such a cool thing to see.
Yeah, and like that's probably the best part of all of this is like
Mm-hmm.
really helping people realize that they're capable of so much. And then that translates into other parts of their life. So
Yes, exactly.
like it just has this like really great effect across like other areas that you're like, yes, you can do this.
That's so cool. Um, and to our last topic of discussion, business owner, entrepreneur. Again, I know so little about this about you. So tell me name of the business, what y'all do, all that good stuff, how it got started.
So my husband and I run Holistic Athlete. It is a fitness consulting business, and it sounds kind of vague, but we do a lot of one-on-one remote coaching. We have a group coaching aspect, and then we run in-person classes at a gym in Burlington, in Canada. So we've been running those. We're the first Hyrox affiliate in Canada 3 years ago, and then we've been running classes ever since, like 2.5-ish, almost three. And we've been running classes ever since, growing like the Hyrox community here, which is really cool to see. I remember like, when we first started getting like 4 people to come to class was like challenging. Nobody knew what Hyrox was, all the stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then fast forward to like this year and like last year, the brink of like Hyrox Toronto, we're having like 50, 60 people come to class, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then just the community we've built in person here, like at the gym we work at, is like super cool to see.
What would you say is like the vision and the core purpose behind what y'all have built?
Um, I would say for us, like the vision is to continue to grow like the holistic athlete brand, like internationally, in terms of being known for really solid coaching, really solid group programming, continue to keep up our reputation here in terms of like really great, unique. A lot of people tell us our programming is super unique
Mm,
because we kind of do everything ourselves based off experience, based off, our own different ideas and creativity. And we run our classes here and don't cookie cutter any programming. It's all specific. And I would say for us, like we want to be on a mission to help as many people as possible achieve kind of like what they didn't think was possible. But through taking a holistic approach, that's where the name came from. So, like taking into account mindset, taking into account physical, spiritual well being of people, um, to make training fit their lives and not make them fit training.
do you think that like having that as kind of your core mission is what's helped build such a strong community?
Yeah. And I think also just like the genuine care we put into everything, we always said to ourselves, like, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Build it with authenticity, build it with like, make it the best possible experience for people and they will come. And since then, like, that's something we've always prided ourselves on is like always staying true to who we are, caring a lot about our people, trying to create an environment or space that's like super inclusive and not making it seem like only a certain demographic come or whatever that is. We try to embody that this can be a class and a space for everybody. And we really try to make sure everyone feels like they can come and show up. And then it's really cool to see, because the people we have in our community here are really awesome. So it's so cool to see like different people from different walks of life connect and like build friendships. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, cool. Didn't see that one. Or like you start to see like these connections, and it's really cool because people stay after, or like you'll hear somebody go, hey, how was your trip to Hawaii? Or like,
Yep.
how's your grandson doing? And you're like, oh. Like they know people on a personal level,
Yep.
which I think like also creates such a good, strong bond across people.
That is super fun to see. We had our first within our Know to Fit program. We had a couple who met at the gym and now have gotten married. So I was like,
No
that's
way.
so exciting. Um, okay, back to Hyrox when it comes to like the fast growth of this sport, and we're seeing. I've shared my thoughts on previous episodes about like what I think could be done better from Hyrox as a whole.
Hmm.
Because in short, I think the affiliation fee is way too low because I
Okay.
think anyone can just affiliate and then like they don't even have a sled. It's like, okay, you're going to train me for Hyrox, you don't have a sled. That's not ideal.
Hmm.
So a lot of gyms are just affiliating to get the name recognition, and then just partnering with a bunch of national brands.
Hmm.
How do y'all kind of navigate the difficulties that come with that? Where it's like, okay, now everyone's doing this. Kind of how do you help you? How do y'all stand apart and navigate that space?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because it is true. People can affiliate kind of with any, as long as they pay the fee, they can become a Hyrox affiliate. And you'll see affiliates that necessarily haven't done a race before and are
Mm-hmm.
affiliating. Or, I think at the end of the day, we've always prided ourselves on experience, unique programming, and like actually caring and showing people, if they need support on rowing, skiing, their sled pull looks off. Like we just have the experience and knowledge, and all our coaches do as well, to be able to support people and might give them that one cue that then, oh my gosh, these wall balls are so much easier. And I
Mm-hmm.
had somebody say that to me the other day. I made one small adjustment, and their whole form changed. And I'm like,
Yes.
that's the value you get from coming with like experienced coaches. And then also, another thing we try to do is, aside from just like writing the workout, we know our people really well now, and we pair people together. Or,
Mm-hmm.
we might see like, Chris, you've been using the 14-pound wall ball for like a few weeks now. It looks really smooth. I want you to try 18. And people don't always get that, right? You don't get
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that extra push, and like, I see your potential. So I want to help push you. And how can I do that? By challenging you in training, knowing your background, your history. Or I might have somebody come to me and say, hey, I had someone came up to my class and was like, hey, I'm just here. I had a really bad day. So and so in my family passed away. I'm just here to get a workout in, blah, blah, blah. So if you see me kind of like, essentially just giving me that little side story. So then you're like there on a more of an encouraging perspective versus being like, why aren't you hitting 20 reps and stuff like that, right? So it's like meeting people where they're at. And I think we do a really good job of that. And then putting enough care into helping people improve. And like I said, like you build a really good community. You have really knowledgeable, strong coaches. We're lucky that, right now I have a bunch of like very experienced, amazing coaches that like all bring something different to the table too, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like different coaching types, different experience and backgrounds. But I always want to make sure that they have the experience that we need to deliver the programming, not just deliver it, but help people. So as much as like, yeah, you see like lots of gyms popping up, and we have it in our area too, but you just keep showing up, keep delivering good programming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's like the biggest differentiator, right? Is like experience, knowledge, amazing community, um, and just like, yeah, you just keep building solid athletes, really.
Yeah, I think that's huge too. Because one thing, like when I first started working in a gym, is I didn't trust my own expertise. I guess we'll use that word. And it was a lot of like, okay, what's lower prices to get people in here? But it's like, no, if you just provide a good product, the price doesn't matter. None of the other stuff matters. If you provide a really good product, a really good community, all the things you were just talking about, what other people are doing does not matter. It doesn't matter if you're twice the price of them. If your product is that much better. People are going to pay and show up and want to be there.
100%. I think that's a good point, is like sometimes you can't be too reactive in a market
Mm-hmm.
and be like, okay, we're gonna undercut, this other gym.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but then you undercut your value. Like, it's like, I've always been a firm believer in like, we provide a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
We even ran like track sessions this summer, and like we did testing with everybody. We taught them how to calculate threshold pace. We taught them
Mm-hmm.
how to run it, like run mechanics. Like, you're not going to get that everywhere.
Nope.
And really just sharing knowledge and, like you said, a good product. And you can't be too reactive in a market. Sure, you want to have your eye on competitors, know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But I found even when people have like undercut our pricing, people will still come back.
Yeah, 100%. So
Mhm.
just keep doing a good job, in short.
Exactly.
Okay, last question before we head into we do like a rapid fire at the end.
Okay.
For what is next for you and for Hyrox as a sport? What do you have on your agenda?
So I'll see you in Atlanta.
Let's go. I'm only there for like 4 hours though.
Oh, damn. What day are you
Yeah.
there?
I'm doing doubles on Sunday.
Okay. I race Sunday, so I'll see you
Oh,
there.
perfect. See you Sunday.
So Atlanta, we're gonna get people ready we have two other races in Canada this year, which is huge. So we have one in
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver in December and one in Ottawa in May. So we'll get people ready for that, especially here. We're going to create some new ideas over the winter for our in-person programming to keep people, training, excited, kind of like, it's hard. I find like if people don't have a race ahead, it's like, what's the point in training? Like, people kind of need something on the calendar, I think, to keep
Mm-hmm.
them kind of going. So we're going to think of some gym events and stuff like that and fun stuff to do over the winter, because you have to be creative because we get snow here and not everyone can run outside.
What is snow?
Um, it's not good. And then goal is Texas. I'm doing Dallas, and I'm going to race Elite 15 doubles, or like aim to qualify with a new partner
Okay.
in Dallas, which is exciting, and I'm feeling really good about that.
Nice.
And then our hope is to get into like the Phoenix Major.
Let's go. That's exciting.
Mhm.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. That was a good time. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for spending an hour with me. Well, great. Well, thanks again, Maria, and I have a check-in call with you next week. All right. All right. Bye-bye.